So in addition to Chris Wallace and Neil Cavuto, we've seen Fox News host Eric Shawn sort of start to play the role of a so-called truth teller on Fox News. And I always have to issue caveats. By truth teller on Fox News, I merely mean he acknowledges that Donald Trump lost the election. That it's a very low standard, and Chris Wallace and Neil Cavuto have been willing to say that. Eric Shawn also is willing to say Joe Biden won. And on Fox News, this is sort of a controversial truth to be told when half the network still refuses to say it. And in a little bit, we're going to talk about how Fox News has radicalized its viewers to the point that they are now too radical for Fox. But part of what's going on is that some people are trying to acknowledge basic truths on Fox, and they're getting crushed. And anchor Shep Smith was one of those people on Fox, but he left, now on CNBC. And maybe Eric Shawn is the guy taking Shep's place to some degree. Check this out. Eric Shawn fact-checking some of Donald Trump's obvious lies that Trump told on the same network just hours earlier in his interview with Maria Bartiromo, the complete brown-nosing Trump sycophant. We played clips from the Maria Bartiromo interview earlier. Here is Eric Shawn starting to pick it apart.
This election was a total fraud, and it continues to be as they hide. And the problem we have, we go to judges and people don't want to get involved.
That is, of course, President Trump claiming massive voter fraud this morning. His words: they stuffed the ballot box. It was a, quote, fake election. All this despite the fact that his campaign has failed to prove any of this in court. In fact, your government, election officials, experts, and others, many of them Republican, including Trump-appointed officials, say that the president's claims are false and unsubstantiated. He does, though, promise to reveal the alleged fraud in court, including a slew of affidavits from people who say they did witness election wrongdoing. But legal experts note affidavits are not necessarily fact.
I like this because in just 30 seconds, he puts the entire case up front to the Fox News audience. He's making claims for which there is no evidence. Affidavits aren't necessarily fact. And we really have to keep talking about that. Sworn affidavits are a form of evidence that is sometimes admissible and sometimes not. And it is up to a judge and jury to determine whether it is credible. When an eyewitness testifies in person in a trial, because they testified, that doesn't mean you necessarily believe everything they say. You may find their testimony credible or not credible, or you might find it accurate but irrelevant to the crux of what is being discussed. Much the same way these sworn affidavits, people could be lying or not. People could be telling the truth as they remember it and be wrong, or they may be telling the truth and be right, and those truths might not really mean anything about whether Joe Biden actually won some of these states. And affidavits are just like anything else in terms of evidence. Then Eric Shawn hilariously wants to talk about these supposed massive dumps that Donald Trump mentioned. Take a look.
Let's break down to some of what the president claimed this morning. He says there were massive dumps of illegal votes in Biden's favor, specifically pointing out Detroit. Here's the president.
You just take a look at just about every state that we're talking about, every swing state that we're talking about, and they did these massive dumps of votes, and all of a sudden I went from winning by a lot to losing by a little.
Well, officials say these are not illegal dumps. That's just the counting of the many mail-in ballots that are entered into the computer system. Are these illegal votes? Is that a proof of massive voter fraud?
Well, there's no evidence to substantiate that. And when you talk to Republicans in these states or on these election boards, very few of them are substantiating that at all.
The problem here is that I don't know if the average Fox News viewer understands the meaning of this language, because when the Axios reporter says there's no evidence to substantiate that, what it means is it's a claim without evidence whatsoever. There's an invisible purple elephant right here next to me. You just can't see them because they're invisible. Well, there's no evidence to substantiate that. What that means is it's a claim I've made and there is no reason whatsoever to believe it. That's what it means. I don't know that that really works for the Fox News audience. Rand Paul actually is one of the people who jumped on this massive dump story. he tweeted, quote, "Interesting. Trump margin of defeat in 4 states occurred in 4 data dumps between 1:34 and 6:31 a.m. Statistical anomaly, fraud. Look at the evidence and decide for yourself." So what Rand Paul means is during a 5-hour period on election night, votes were being counted. He's acting like at the 36-second past 5:41 a.m. mark, all the votes came in, flipping 8 states from Trump to Biden. It's like, no, it was election night. Many states aren't even allowed to count mail-in ballots until polls close, thanks mostly to Republicans. And so overnight, during a 5-hour period, votes came in from various states and results were updated to reflect that. They're making a controversy where none exists. Let's look at a little more of Eric Shawn's kind of pulling apart of Trump's lies.
Yeah, they picked up seats in the House. The president says thousands of dead people voted. Here's that.
There are a lot of dead people that so-called voted in this election, but dead people were, in some cases, in many, many cases, thousands of cases, voted.
Officials point out that does happen sometimes, either clerical errors or maybe a husband or wife votes in the name of someone who's deceased. That's a felony. Was that enough to change this election?
Statistically, likely not. When you just look at the number of deaths that have been out there, that, you know, and you transpose that onto the universe of ballots.
So another talking point debunked, dead people voting. And then finally here, Eric Shawn pointing out what this is really all about.
Finally, Hans, it seems that we have a president who he can't wrap his brain or mind around the fact. He can't process the fact that someone who he thinks is so inferior to him won the election.
Maybe, or maybe he's just establishing a predicate for running in 2024. So, you know, I don't know what the president's overall long-term strategic plan is here, if there's a plan, or even if it's strategic. But we know, at least rhetorically, he's not accepting it, and he's clearly laying the predicate for a run in 2024.
As Eric Shawn points out, Trump cannot wrap his mind around the idea that he lost to someone that he considered was very much inferior to him. So 2 things here. First of all, the takeaways. The only takeaway you need factually about the allegations is there's no evidence for the things that Trump claims in public in the court filings. The things Trump claims they don't put in the court filings because the lawyers know they're not true. In terms of Fox News, what's going on here is that they have radicalized their audience to be too radical even for Fox News. And that's what I want to talk about next.